So, hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Keep the Tail Wagging, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to see your questions until I'm finished with this presentation. But we have 45 glorious minutes, and I promise this part will go by quickly, and we are going to have a lot of time for me to answer questions. So, this is Raw Feeding 101, and it's just going to be the basics of raw feeding. I start every presentation I do on this topic with a note that I am not a veterinarian, nor am I an animal nutritionist. I am a pet blogger and a dog mom, and I have been feeding raw for over 7 years. I started in April of 2013 because one of my dogs was sick all the time, but we will get to that in a second. So who am I? My name is Kimberly Gauthier. That's me with my dog, Rodrigo. He is the inspiration behind Keep the Tail Wagging. He and his sister, Sydney, who sadly we lost a couple of days ago to hemangiosarcoma. He is 10 and a half years old and sleeping at my feet right now. But I am all of these things, but I am a raw feeder, and I write about my experience feeding a raw food diet on my blog, Keep the Tail Wagging. So what exactly is raw feeding? A lot of times people think that raw feeding is, all of us think that our dogs are wolves, and so we're going to feed our dogs like they're wild animals. No, we don't think that at all. We understand that dogs aren't wolves, but we do take inspiration from the diet of the gray wolf. So the idea is that if our dogs were wild, would they be eating a highly processed diet, or would they be eating live prey? Not to say that I encourage people to go and get live prey, but it's just to say that we want to fashion our dog's diet out of what they would eat if they were wild dogs. But then we have to adjust that diet to account for the fact that they are domesticated dogs. They have adapted over the years, and every dog is different and has different needs. So what I end up feeding is I call a prey model plus. And all of us feed a different variation. There are so many different raw feeding models, it's insane. And you can call your raw feeding model whatever you want to call it. Another thing that I call my diet is Frankenbarf. And basically what it basically means is that we're taking a raw food diet, we're starting with the basics, and then we're adapting it to our individual dogs. So with my dog's diet, I start with 80% muscle meat, 10% bone, 5% secreting organs, and 5% liver. Those secreting organs are things like, kidneys. And I always think of it as anything that if you squeeze it, it does a squishy sound, and that's kind of gross. And I think probably most organs will do that. But there's tons of list of secreting organs on the internet that you can look up. But the ones that I mainly get are going to be kidney, spleen, a little bit of pancreas is in the organ blend that I purchased for my dogs. Testicles is another one. Not everyone has access to all of these, and so you do the best you can. There was a time when I was only feeding my dogs like pork heart, pork liver, and pork kidneys, because that's all I had access to. I know that some people don't feed heart as organ meat, they feed it as muscle meat. I honestly think that it's semantics at this point. I think all of it is nutritious, and the 80-10-10 or the 80-10-5-5 was just an estimate that someone came up with a long time ago when they were talking about, like, when you look at a prey animal, so a rabbit or a deer, what is the makeup? And they figure it's probably 80% muscle meat, 10% bone, and so on. This was not meant to become the standard by which we fed our dogs, but it does serve as a great starting point. I don't use math to figure this out. I just eyeball it. When I'm putting food into a bowl, and since you guys can see me, I just happen to have a stainless steel bowl here. It's not for the presentation, but I have tons of those bowls. I throw the food into the bowl, mix it up, and that's me making a raw meal. Additional to the food that I feed, you're going to see vegetables, you're going to see fish, you're going to see base mix. I use base mixes by Dr. Harvey's, Raw Vibrance and Paradigm. I find it easier to use a base mix than to stress about balancing our dog's diet, and we'll get into that soon. And then I use any type of supplements that are specific to each of my dogs. I have a senior dog that has a set of supplements that are for him and his, like, he has arthritis, and to help him with that, he also has EPI, which is exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, and basically means his pancreas is kaput and he doesn't produce lipase, amylase, or protease. So that is one of those things where he has to have specific supplements that my other dogs don't get. And I have dogs of all ages, so I'm basically making sure that they're getting everything they need. If we had a puppy in the house, I would make sure that there is a lot of omega-3 fatty acids going into his diet for brain development. I actually do that for Rodrigo because he's a senior dog, to make sure he's having good cognitive development as he ages. So ultimately, your diet, when you make one, is going to be specific to your dogs. So why do I feed raw? I have a dog that kept getting sick. The one at my feet, Rodrigo, the one in that picture, he kept getting sick. For the first 3 years of his life, I went to the vet at least 3 times a year for allergies, for digestive issues, for skin rashes, for ear infections. He was licking his paws until they developed sores. He was grossly overweight. Both of my dogs were back then. I had 2 dogs, Rodrigo and Sydney. I didn't know that they were grossly overweight. You know, you can thank social media for informing me of that. But he was just unhealthy, and he started developing joint issues before he was 2 years old. And my vet at the time, he treated everything by prescribing antibiotics, and I didn't know the damage that antibiotics did to the gut microbiome. And so instead of him getting better, he just kept getting worse. Well, during all of this, I was also blogging, and I was meeting different people who were feeding different things. And I kept hearing about raw diets, and people were talking about how, you know, their dog had these health issues. They started feeding raw, and all of a sudden their dog is so much healthier. A senior dog is acting like a puppy again. All of these things. You can see the list of the benefits right here. And I was a little skeptical, but, you know, I figured nothing else was working. I'm spending all this money in vet bills. Why not give it a shot? And so I actually contacted Darwin's Natural Pet, which is a local company to me here in Washington State. And they got me set up with a delivery. And within 2 weeks, and I was feeding half raw, half kibble, because I didn't know that it was an option to switch cold turkey. And I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't, because with Rodrigo's digestive issues, he might have had an issue with a fast transition, which may have turned me off of the diet. So I fed raw in the morning and kibble in the evening. I didn't mix the two together because it actually made Rodrigo sick to do so. It did not make Sydney sick. People will tell you that you can't do it because of the pH balances of the food, because one digests quicker than the other, all these different things out there. I just say, look at your dog and do what's best for your dog. And if your dog can handle it, and if it's not going to make your dog sick, then maybe it's something that you can try. But for me, since it made one of my dogs very sick, I just avoid it for all of my dogs. And today I don't feed kibble, so it's a non-issue. Anyway, for about 2 or 3 months, I fed raw in the morning, kibble in the evening, until we ran out of the kibble. And I saw an improvement in Rodrigo's health within the first 2 weeks of feeding a fresh food diet. So I was sold. And from there, basically the rest is history. I fed pre-made raw for about 9 months, and then I transitioned in 2014 to DIY. So where do I get the ingredients? With pre-made raw, I didn't order online back then, but you can with Darwin's now. They have a website. You can set up an account. You can set up recurring orders. Back then, I just called Darwin's and set up everything. You can also get raw at the pet stores. I'm sure you guys have seen pet stores, whether they be the big box pet stores or the independent pet stores, now all have freezers in them. So you can see the different raw brands in the freezers. I do have favorites. I won't go into them now because I believe we have an international audience. So my favorites aren't going to mean a whole heck of a lot to folks in Canada or the UK. Or Africa, if anyone is from Africa on here. And so, but you can go to your local pet store in many areas and find what they have. You can also join a raw food co-op. We here in Washington and Oregon have a raw food co-op, and I can get everything. It's the same as shopping at a store, except for I'm buying everything in bulk. So anything that I can get at a pet store, I can get through the raw food co-op. So as a DIY raw feeder, my sources expand. I can go anywhere. So I can go to the butcher, which is amazing because Raw feeding 7 years ago, it wasn't new, but it was just starting to hit mainstream where more and more people were talking about it. There were tons of people that had been doing it for decades, but more and more people were talking about it. We were starting to see pet stores with freezers, not the big box ones, but the independent pet stores started having freezers. And there were things like Bravo Pet Foods was out there, Answers Pet Food was out there, Steve's Real Food was out there, of course Darwin's was out there. Here also we had Seattle Natural Pet Pantry. So raw feeding was a thing, but it was still in the newest stages. So butchers around here weren't, you go to them and say, hey, do you have extra this, or do you offer this? They would look at you like you were crazy and say, well, if you want meat, here's the meat. But they didn't really understand that we were looking for unique organs. And, do you have anything that you would normally throw out that you can sell me for my dog? They didn't really get that. Today, most of the butchers in my area have a line of dog food. Usually it's going to be your basic, where it's going to be 80-10-10. So you're going to have to add food into it to meet your dog's nutritional needs, but it's available. You can go and buy things from a grocery store. A girlfriend of mine who lives in Florida, she does all of her shopping at her local grocery store. She got to know the butcher and she places her own orders in bulk from her butcher or the meat manager. There's also discount grocery stores where you can go and stock up on really great cuts of meat for a really discounted price. Ethnic markets are a gem for different types of fish, different types of organ, or any type of unique cuts of meat that you want to feed to your dog. And then of course, local farms. I live in a rural area, so I'm very lucky. Anyone who buys a cow, has it butchered, all the parts that they don't use, I usually get an email, a message, or a call saying, hey, Kimberly, do you want this, beef heart and this liver? And I'm like, absolutely. And I will go and pick it up. I usually pick up a bucket full of raw meat and come home, grind it up, package it up, and throw it in the freezer. So that's where I am shopping. Oops. So when do I do meal prep? When it comes to meal prep, I usually do it on the weekends because that's when I have the most time. And I do it when I either need to free up freezer space, or when I don't have, well, I should say when I need to basically when I need to free up freezer space. I need to basically make things a little more organized. I buy everything in bulk. So I get cases of Chubs. Most everything is ground nowadays, which is really nice because people have really embraced the raw food market. And so it makes it a lot easier. To buy ground is a little bit more expensive, but some farms just don't give you a choice. They're going to sell it ground, and it's fine because it saves me from grinding food. And speaking of grinding, I do have a grinder. It's not necessary, but it is helpful because a lot of dogs either aren't sure about raw in the beginning, and a lot of pet parents are nervous about feeding whole raw to their dogs. So having a grinder makes it so much easier for everyone. So I have one. It's a 3/4 horsepower Cabela's grinders. It's a carnivore grinder from Cabela's. I think that is the minimum that you need. It is an investment. Mine cost over $400. So yeah, it's an investment. Maybe look around the holidays to see if they have it on sale. If you have a friend who feeds raw too, you guys can go in on a grinder together. I have friends that have a 1 horsepower grinder, and I'm super jelly, but my 3/4 horsepower grinder has been my saving grace for at least 4 or 5 years. I've had it, and it's been amazing. But these are my freezers. I have 2 full freezers. It's mostly my dogs. You can see I threw some Gatorade and some ice cream in one of the freezers. And then I have a fridge. So when I need to thaw things out, it goes into the fridge, and then the upper part is the freezer. And so I have a little bit of everything in here. And as you can see, I try to keep it as organized as possible. And so you see the plastic bins. When a section opens up where there's nothing in there, that's when I'm going to be doing meal prep. And I'm going to be thawing stuff out and mixing up meals so that I'm just always pulling out frozen bins to thaw out. So how do I make a quote unquote balanced meal? So the reason why balanced is in quotes is because I am of the belief that there is no such thing as a balanced diet for dogs. And it's not that the diet isn't nutritious. It's just the idea of balance that I struggle with. A lot of people are putting themselves and and others under a lot of pressure to produce a balanced raw diet, when in actuality, balance really depends on the dog. It depends on the resources that are available to you. It depends on the time you want to take to put into balance. And then, of course, it depends on who are you looking to tell you that it's balanced. Because we've all learned that AFCO isn't the best place to look for a balanced diet. Plus, AFCO is based on processed kibble, not on a raw diet. There actually hasn't been an organization created, at least not yet, that determines what is balanced in a raw diet. The closest that we come to, I believe, is the NRC. And the NRC, for you guys who don't know, is that big red book. I don't have one here. You can get it on Amazon. It costs like $100 and something, I think maybe 80 to $100 and something. And it's full of science. And people say that it's super easy to read, and you read it and you better understand how to feed your dogs. That was not my experience at all. I borrowed my friend's book and I flipped through it and was just like, what the what? And it gives you the thought that, how in the world, or why in the world am I putting all of this energy and time and brain space into feeding my dog when I don't do this for myself? And it's not to say that it's wrong to do that. It's just to say that it doesn't have to go that way. You can feed a nutritious diet without making it overly complicated. Now, if overly complicated is your jam, then go for it. I mean, there are a lot of people that love the science. They love the math. They love figuring this out. I actually have a software program that helps me create a balanced diet. And I did it because at the time that I bought it, I was actually going to start offering meal prep services or meal planning services. I have since changed my mind because it is very complicated to figure out what a dog should eat. Every dog is different and unique. And so my thought is, when you are new to raw feeding, don't worry about balance. Worry about feeding your dog a nutritious diet. And then as you learn more, and the learning, it goes on for years. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You will constantly be learning new things and adapting and adjusting your dog's diet. If you are stressing yourself out on a daily basis about whether or not your dog is eating a nutritious diet, you will not have as much fun as I'm having feeding my dogs. So I wanted to just put that out there. There are people who vehemently disagree with what I just said, and that's okay as well. But I think that when you're brand new to raw feeding, the idea that you're going to jump from, yes, I want to feed raw, to now let's get a calculator and calculate all of the macro and micronutrients that my dogs need, that's a huge leap. I figure that you should take your time and get there. Not too much time, but you definitely should take your time and get there. Here's an example of a recipe that I feed to my dogs. So I do everything in bulk prep because I have a ton of big dogs. So this is like a small meal prep that I would do. I would do this like on a Wednesday night, real quick and easy. So 20 pounds of ground quail. I do 6 pounds of beef tripe and organ blend. And I put an asterisk there and forgot that I was going to add what is in the organ blend. I don't know it by heart, but it's beef heart, beef liver, beef tripe, beef kidney, beef spleen, and I think a little bit of pancreas is in that raw blend. And then I do 3 cups of Dr. Harvey's raw vibrants. That's what's in this meal. I prefer Paradigm because it's low glycemic, and it's really great for if you want a dog to be on a keto diet. But I alternate with my dogs between raw vibrants and Paradigm. And then when I feed the dogs individually, I'll toss in a raw egg every other day, and they get a duck neck every day or 2 duck feet every day. And so these slides are just examples of meals. All of these are meals that I've made. And also I feed my dogs up in the upper right-hand corner. They're eating whole duck frames and more meals. And all of these are just super crazy easy to do. I also, in this image, you see the zucchini noodles. I had extra zucchini noodles, and so I just threw them in the bowl with some green tripe and an egg and fed them to the dogs. The upper right-hand image, that's a fasting day image because I fast my dogs once a week. I don't do a true fast where they don't eat. I do a modified fast where all they do is get raw goat's milk in the morning and the evening with a raw egg. And now let's talk about supplements. So you're feeding your dogs a raw food diet, and now you start asking about, well, should I give my dog a multivitamin? the question that I get most of the time is, what supplement do I need to give to my dog to balance their diet? And my response is, there is no supplement out there that will balance your dog's raw diet. I believe in giving supplements based on what your dog needs. So my dogs get fermented fish stock because that covers probiotics for gut health, and it covers the omega-3 fatty acids. It's great for joint health. It's great for kidney health. It's great for brain health. It's great for skin and coat health. It covers a lot of things. So they get, a couple tablespoons in a meal, and I alternate that with kefir. So they get the kefir or kefir, however you say it, on their fasting day. And that's also for gut health. I also add Dr. Harvey's Immune Boost to their diet. I don't know if I spelled that right, but that is, as it says, it's for a boosted immune system. And I started adding this when one of my dogs developed a wart, and that is actually a virus that can spread to the other dogs. And it's a sign that your dog's immune system needs a little work. And so I started adding this to his meal, along with treating the wart with colloidal silver and coconut oil by Coco Therapy, and it went away. And then another dog got it, did the same thing to him, and it went away. It didn't spread any further. So from there, I just started adding Immune Boost to my dog's diet, probably about 4 days a week, to boost their immune system. Rodrigo, he is our resident senior. He gets Canine System Saver, which is fantastic for senior dogs and helps with so many things. I highly recommend you visit their website. It's Dr. Baker's Canine System Saver, and look at the testimonials. They will blow you away. I also do Dr. Harvey's COQ10 for heart health. There is a herbal company called Kairos for Dogs, and they make herbal blends. And so I order an herbal blend from them that is both for senior dogs, regular dogs, and it also supports liver health. And I mix in turkey tail from Canine Matrix. I make a huge, using this bowl, I put it all in a bowl, use a wire whisk to whisk it all together, and then I store it in glass jars. And that is a supplement that my dogs get about 4 days a week. And then all of my dogs, Apollo is 1 year and 9 months. Scout and Zoe are almost 7, and Rodrigo is 10.5. They're all on joint supplements. Everyone takes Nutramax except for Rodrigo, who is on WinPro Mobility. And the reason why Rodrigo's on a different supplement is because I have tons of it. And his sister, it did such great things for her. And so now it's for him as well. So I'm going to go back here. So when it comes to supplements, when you're in raw feeding groups, you're going to be tempted to buy everything that people are going to tell you about. And I just want to say, be careful of doing that, because you can end up spending a lot of money on things that your dog doesn't need. You might be adding things to your dog's diet that offset something else. And there's always a risk and benefit to everything that we add to our dog's diet. So before you add anything to your dog's diet, if someone makes a recommendation, even if they sound like they really know what they're talking about, do your homework. Ask questions, call the company and talk to them about the supplement. Just make sure it's something that your dog needs, because it's not necessarily something that your dog needs. And so, yes, do your homework. When it comes to feeding a raw food diet, as I said earlier, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You are not expected to know everything today. And there are going to be days when it can be frustrating, when you're going to learn new things about a raw food diet, and it's going to throw a wrench in everything that you've been doing. That happened to me a few years ago when Dogs Naturally magazine published an article about balancing fats. And in that article, at least as far as I remember, it was never said that if you're feeding a variety of foods that you don't really have to worry about balancing fats. I didn't walk away from the article with that knowledge. I walked away thinking, crap, I've been doing this wrong for years. And that wasn't correct. And so now, even if it's a reputable magazine or website, get another source and then get a third source. Just make sure that you are comfortable doing a change for your dogs, because although it may be important for some people, it may not be important for your dogs. Set boundaries on social media. when it comes to social media, everyone has an opinion, everyone is trying to help, and everyone means well, but you have to set boundaries when it comes to social media. If you are in a raw feeding group and you are constantly feeling like you can't do this right, you feel like you are just basically screwing up on a daily basis and your dog is suffering for it because of the information either being told to you or shared with you, leave the group. Because that's not how raw feeding should be. It shouldn't be freaking stressful. It's so easy. I feed 4 big dogs a raw food diet on a daily basis. And for the past year, I was feeding 5 dogs a raw food diet on a daily basis. And they are all fine. I had my dogs nutrient tested. They passed with flying colors. And it's just by 80-10-10 and using a base mix and then supplements that are for each of my dogs. That's all. It's really, really easy. Anyone who is going to tell you that it's not easy, I disagree with them 100%. So I say, set boundaries when it comes to social media. Make sure you understand that although everyone has their opinion based on their experience, some people have an opinion based on education. People are going out there and getting training on animal nutrition. And that's great, but none of those people have any experience with your dog. You are the expert on your dog. So always remember that. You are doing something right because your dog is doing good. So variety is the key, and not just with proteins, but with all of the ingredients you add to the bowl, the supplements that you get, your sourcing, get things from different places, and then also your resources. And so that means the bloggers that you follow, the veterinarians that you follow, the websites that you follow, and the Facebook groups that you join. If you are looking for informative and friendly Facebook groups, highly recommend Raw Feeding 101, Learn to Feed Raw, and Raw Feeding University. Those 2 are the best groups, I think, in my opinion, on Facebook. Raw Feeding 101 is really great for beginners, but it has tons of experienced people in the group too. Everyone is very friendly, and their moderators are really there to help and keep the group, friendly and moving forward. And Raw Feeding University feels like a lot of the people in that group, I mean, they're actually sort of both in both groups, but a lot of the admins in Raw Feeding University have taken the time to get more education on animal nutrition. They understand the NRC guidelines very well. Many of them can formulate meals. And so they can talk to you about the macro and micronutrients. They can tell you about, if you need to know, like, where can my dog get more vitamin D, like what foods, instead of going for a supplement, you want to add a food, they can actually give you a list right off the top of their head. I mean, it's the level of knowledge in that group is stupendous. And what I like about most groups is that they're not there to judge you or tell you that you're doing things wrong. They're more focused on helping you succeed and sharing information. And that is what's amazing. So always keep your veterinarian in the loop. I know some of us are like, well, veterinarians don't know anything about nutrition. It's still important to keep your veterinarian in the loop. And I'm going to tell you why, but you want to get your wellness checks. You want to get your annual blood work. For some people, they like to do blood work twice a year. You want to do hair test analysis for nutrient to see, make sure your dogs are getting the nutrients they need, to make sure there aren't any heavy metals that are high in their body. But the biggest part is that we don't have a worldwide study on the benefits of feeding a fresh food diet to animals. But as veterinarians around the world are starting to treat these animals and, seeing for wellness checks, that is what's going to start changing their minds and getting them on board with a raw food diet. And I have met so many veterinarians. I have a veterinarian that's amazingly supportive of how I feed my dogs, but sometimes she's on vacation. So she has a visiting veterinarian, and they will see Rodrigo, and they swear that he's like 4 or 5 years old because he's so happy and energetic, and he's in great shape for a senior dog. And those of us in the raw community, we're seeing our dogs live, to 15 and 16 and 17 years old. But in the veterinarian community, 10 years old is an old dog. And so we need to be able to show them these dogs and show them that, well, what are you feeding your dog? Well, this dog is actually raw fed. And if they have reservations, respectfully address them. I mean, when a veterinarian is like, well, you have to be really careful with that diet. And I go, yes, I know. I've taken the time to educate myself. I read books. I follow veterinarians. I do, and I explain to them what I do. I explain to them about how I feel about the bacteria. I explain to them, what I'm doing about when I feed them raw mini bones, that I only feed bones under supervision, and it just basically, when you can explain to them and show them that you are actually willing to do the work it takes to make sure your dogs are fed a nutritious diet, they kind of relax a little because you've addressed their fears. Not all vets, but I honestly think that over time we'll get them on our side. So again, every dog is different and every journey is different. Don't compare yourselves to other people and what they're doing. Focus on your dogs and what is right for your dogs, and then continually educating yourself. And that's it. So this is Sydney. Sydney is the dog that passed this week of her mangio, but this is one of her favorite things to do. And it's one of my favorite pictures of her. These are our other dogs. Scout, Rodrigo with the ring. He's 10 and a half years old. And then Zoe. And I don't have a picture on here of Apollo, but that is the presentation. So I'm going to go back to the top and see if you guys have any questions. Hi, Diane. So Shona says, why do you fast your dogs? I fast my dogs because it's a good way to have the system reset. And you can actually even do this for yourself. Before I started fasting my dogs, because I was terrified, I was like, oh my God, I'll be starving my dogs. I did it for myself. And I basically, it's sort of like intermittent fasting. I wouldn't eat until 10 in the morning, and I would stop eating at, I think, 5 in the evening. And I was fine. I was more energetic. I felt a lot better. I felt great. And so I started doing it with my dogs. And that's basically what I'll do is my dogs will have, they had their milk at 8 this morning. They will have another milk at about 3 this afternoon. And then that's all they'll eat for the day. And they're perfectly fine. I also fast my dogs if they're not feeling well, if they're having stomach issues, they feel nauseous. Instead of giving them something for nausea, I just let it work through their system unless I think that they got into something bad or the nausea lasts for more than a day. Then I will give them, like activated charcoal, or there's another thing like bentonite clay to soak up anything that they may have gotten into and get that out of their system. But yeah, it's mostly to reset the system, reset the gut, give the immune system a nice little boost. Sheila says, what about skin tags? I'm not sure what your question is. So can you elaborate on that? Kristen says, does your food grinder do well grinding up bone, or is it only for boneless meats? It does great for grinding up bone. While there are grinders that are okay with us by grinding bones, and I think is because, they are maybe going to start marketing to raw feeders, a lot of meat grinders out on the market, the warranty will be voided if you grind bones in it. A lot of people are afraid then to get a grinder or to grind bones in their grinder because they're afraid that the warranty will be voided. I've had my grinder for 4 or 5 years, been grinding bones the entire time and had not had a problem. So I do not grind like beef or pork bones, but it does rabbit, it does quail, it does duck, it does chicken. I haven't ground turkey in my grinder. It can handle turkey, but I don't buy turkey for my dogs. So that's one protein that when I buy it, it comes already ground. So it's not necessary for me to grind it, but it hasn't had any problem. It hasn't broke or gotten stuck. I had to replace the auger probably a couple years ago, but that's about it. The auger is like a spinning part in the machine. But yeah, it's been really great. Any suggestions for helping? Okay, so I don't know about these cysts. I would say, because I'm not a veterinarian, that is a question that I would direct to a veterinarian. Kathy, I started cooking my dog's eggs because I researched that a raw egg can block biotin absorption and cause tie up in dogs. Is this true, or can I go back to feeding raw eggs? You can go back to feeding raw eggs. The biotin issue is with feeding egg whites. Like if you were to just feed egg whites to your dogs, that is what would cause a problem. But feeding raw eggs is not a problem. And in fact, you can feed raw or cooked. If you Google it, and look at the nutrient setup of raw eggs versus cooked eggs, it actually doesn't change that much. So you can feed them raw or cooked. What is fermented fish stock? That is a magical food produced by Answers Pet Food. And it is not something that is available outside of the United States, but you can make it yourself. Just prepare for the stinkiness of it. I don't think it's going to be on par with the quality of Answers products, because it seems like nothing is. They really, truly are the best company. But I'm going to put a link to a DIY fermented fish stock recipe. And just keep in mind, it stinks. Where do you get your hair analysis done? Dodds. No, Dodds does the allergy test, but the hair analysis I'm talking about is for nutrient testing, and I get it done by Parsley Pet. And I will put a link to that in the notes too. Yeah, and it was really informative, and the report that you got was very detailed, and it's everything is reviewed by Dr. Lori Kozier, who is a holistic veterinarian that has over 25 years experience in holistic medicine and raw feeding. She's also a natural rearing breeder, so she knows how she transitions puppies. She actually just had a litter from mother's milk to raw, and she only gives them to raw families. So she knows all about feeding a raw food diet. And so she can look at that report and give you ideas of what you can do to improve your dog's diet to make it more nutritious. And so when she reviewed ours came back, I think we had, it comes in letter grade, so we got A's, but everyone was slightly low on vitamin B. And so I began adding a little more pork heart to their diet, sometimes beef heart, and that covered that. So yay. How much do you give of goat's milk? So, okay, on fasting day, this is funny because people, I don't have a set amount. It's fat. And I don't know if you guys have ever tried the keto diet for yourself, but when you add more fat to your diet, you kind of feel fuller longer. So I don't have to give my dogs much, but I did measure it out because I knew someone would have that question for me today. So the boys, who are all big, Rodrigo's the smallest one at 60 pounds, Scout and Apollo are over 70 pounds. They get about 8 to 9 ounces of, about 7 to 8 ounces of kefir, basically, or raw goat's milk. And then Zoe, who is my girl, and she tends to put on the weight really easily, she gets about 5 to 6 ounces. And so they will get that twice a day. And so tonight, it won't be 5 to 6 ounces of kefir, but the entire meal will be that much. And so I'll add a raw egg and then fill it in with kefir. But there's no rule to it. I just basically give them enough that I know that they're going to be full with it. And it's something that I have been doing for so long, I kind of just eyeball it. And since it's a fasting day and technically they're supposed to be fasting, I just want to give them enough food when I first started doing this to stave off hunger pukes. I used to have that with our dog Sydney. And so and that's why I started doing a goat's milk fast, because I was worried that with a true fast, she would develop hunger pukes. So having something in her stomach that would make her feel better and get rid of those stomach acids is what prevented that. And I just continued doing it to today. So how much should I feed a 7-pound dog? Well, Aubrey, there are amazing raw food calculators on the internet, and they will tell you exactly how much you should feed your dog. And it'll tell you based on what type of model you want to follow. So I'm going to share a link to the raw food calculator by Perfectly Rawsome. This is, in my opinion, the best one because Ronnie takes into account the different things that you're going to there's different ways you're going to feed your dog. So she has a calculator for puppies and for adult dogs. She has a calculator if you want to feed prey model raw or if you want to feed barf. She even has a calculator for kittens, for raw meaty bones. And she has one if you want to just learn the calories that your dog needs per day. So a lot of information there. And so that's where I would start to figure out how much you want to feed your dog. Are you recommending turmeric in their diet? Agnes, yes, with a caveat. I do add golden paste to my dog's diet. However, I learned, as I was researching hemangiosarcoma, because turmeric is a blood thinner, golden paste is not a good idea to add to the diet of a dog with hemangiosarcoma. There are people who do add golden paste to their dog's diet despite the cancer diagnosis, but they just make sure not to give it to their dog when their dog is having a bleed in hemangio. It's a cancer of blood vessels, and so there are bleeds that happen, and your dog becomes very anemic. And so you don't want to give your dog anything that's going to prevent the body from helping the blood to clot. So, but yeah, I do give all of my dogs, despite the age. I mean, well, they're all adult dogs. I do give them all turmeric. Sheila says, what causes skin tags? Is it a virus like warts? My dog is 7 and has multiple skin tags. I don't know, and I don't think so. But again, that's a really good question for your veterinarian, and I'd actually be really curious to know what you found out, because Rodrigo has one little skin tag, and but it's not growing or anything. So I just watch him to make sure it's not growing. If it starts growing, then I'll take him to the vet to have it removed. But I don't really know what causes them. I don't know if it's something like, with fatty tumors, they're usually caused by excess toxins in the body that the kidney isn't filtering out. So it starts storing up in the fat and it creates a little fatty tumor, but they're benign. So it's nothing to worry about unless they're in an area that is annoying to the dog or causes a dog discomfort, like maybe around the leg. So it's making it hard for a dog to walk. Lucy says, every time I give raw goat's milk, my dog gets terrible diarrhea. Why? Probably because of the high fat content in the raw goat's milk. It could be that your dog is just not used to it. What you can do is you can give your dog a tiny amount and see if you can work up over time. And by over time, give it some months. Give your dog plenty of time. It's not the same, but similar. 2 of my dogs have trouble with green tripe because it's very rich. And so if I were to feed them a meal of green tripe, it would be explosive diarrhea city in this house. But I can give them small amounts of green tripe here and there, and they do just fine. You can also, if your dog has diarrhea, you can also give them something with the raw goat's milk that helps to add more fiber to the diet. So you can do vegetables. One thing that I love doing is like rabbit's feet with the fur, because that, bulks up the stool and helps as well. Marriott says, which grinder, please? It is the carnivore grinder at Cabela's. Cabela's is a outdoorsy store. I always call it a hunter store, but it's outdoorsy, and they have meat grinders. And so I get that one. Another good one is the Weston meat grinder. You can get that on Amazon. But both of them are going to start at, well, if you start with a 3/4 horsepower, they're going to start at about $400 and then go up. I think a 1 horsepower is going to be more like $800, maybe $700-800. Audrey, is there anything that would be helpful to put in the food for a small 11-year-old dog? If you are talking about a raw food diet, I would go with, give your dog a joint supplement and make sure your dog is getting omega-3 fatty acids. Give your dog, if it's a female dog, I would definitely start. Scratch that. Forget I said that. I would go with, I'm trying to think of other things I would add. I would definitely go with things basically that help with cognitive care, that help with inflammation for possible arthritis. That's what I would be most concerned with at that age. If your dog is super great and healthy, and doing fine, then I don't see the need to change that. But, just pay attention to your dog. Your dog better. If your dog starts going a little more slowly. I mean, Rodrigo, he's still active, he's still running around, but he slows down a lot further and he wears out a little more. So I'm doing things for heart health, and I'm doing things for joint health to make sure that he's feeling good. I also give him CBD oil. Jill, can you explain more about the raw food co-op? Oh, happy to. Aubrey, I'm sorry, Jill, 1 second. Aubrey says with not many teeth. Okay, that her 11-year-old doesn't have many teeth. I would definitely go with a ground diet. Even though it has ground bones in it, your dog can still mush it down and eat it. Your dog will be fine, but I would definitely go with, just stick with ground diets. And if it's within your budget, the best diet, which is super soft and super nutritious, is Answers Pet Food. I'm just very much a fangirl here. But Jill says, can you explain more about the raw food co-ops? So the raw food co-ops are an organization where, you know, maybe 1 or 2 people are managing this organization, and they're going to contact like restaurant meat suppliers, farms, raw food brands, pet food suppliers, all of these different places to see, if we order in bulk, what discount can you give us? And members, we pay an annual dues, and then we have set up orders on a calendar, and we go through and we order what we need. We have pickup spots. Our local raw food co-op has pickups from Oregon up to Washington, and we have a date and a time that we go and we pick up our order. So basically it's hundreds of people placing orders in bulk so that we can get the best price. And so that's basically what a raw food co-op is. And I will put a link in the comments. If you are in the States, you can check this link out and see if there's a raw food co-op near you. So I have tried to see if there are raw food co-ops in other areas of the world, and so far I haven't heard back from anyone. Karen says, do you give any vegetables and fruits? Absolutely. I am very big on vegetables. I actually did a presentation last night on my veggie mix. I make a veggie mix. I choose low glycemic vegetables. I puree them and put them in a jar and put them in the freezer. Sometimes I chop up vegetables and put them in a jar and ferment them. For my dogs, I don't give a lot of fruit beyond, we have apple trees, we have blackberries, we have raspberries, we have blueberries. And my dogs will pick their own blackberries. They will steal the blueberries. Those were supposed to be for me, but the dogs will steal them. And right now the Honeycrisp apples are ripe. So the dogs are now picking apples off the apple tree, and they'll just eat those. So they'll eat their own apples. I will sometimes dehydrate apples for treats for all of us. But it's not something that I do on a regular basis. Mostly I do vegetables in their diet. So there. Awesome, guys. Great timing. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And feel free to check me out over on keepthetailwagging.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Insta. And I am on YouTube as well. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a little more understanding of what raw feeding is and see that it really, really is easy. Hi, darling.
Hi, Kimberly. Just wanted to pop in and say a personal thank you for all of the knowledge that you've shared with everybody today. I'm sure you can see in the comments that everybody has been super informed and really loved and enjoyed everything that you've shared with us this evening for me, where I am. So thanking you. We've got outstanding from Eileen, she says. So people have really loved it.
So thank you.
No, thank you. Again, just want to say super big thank you. We would love to have you back again, should we do, which I'm sure we will. I'm sure Sandra will share a little bit more information about future events. And just finally, before we you did mention that you on social media. Can you just kind of maybe drop in the comments or
Sure.
just let us know what your Instagram is, how people can find you on Facebook, so people can keep connected with you and all of the work that you're doing?
I will do that now. If I can get my typing work done. When you're typing under the gun, it just
I know, right? It's like,
I can't spell anything.
So guys, keep an eye on if you look at the chat right now, Kimberly has just posted her Facebook, her Instagram. Stay connected with her, follow her, share any other information. If you've got any additional questions post-event, please feel free. I'm sure, Kimberly, you'll be
yeah, I do. It's like I try to respond to
information.
I try to respond within 48 hours to questions, sometimes sooner. And yeah, hit me up. Just, you know, so thank you guys for checking me out. And I do lives every Sunday and Tuesday with Dr. Lori Kozier. So yeah, you guys can find us on Facebook.
The lives that you do, are they kind of in a similar vein to what you spoke about today?
Yeah, well, we cover raw feeding, but we also cover a lot of health topics as well.
Okay. And I do have one final question before we let you go. So
Sure.
Karina and Carissa, who spoke earlier today, they spoke about the keto diet for dogs. And one of my questions to them was kind of about the idea of transferring human diets to our pets.
Mhm.
And their kind of general advice was kind of, we have to be careful about this direct translation from like human to kind of pet food and pet dieting. And I just kind of wanted to find out from your perspective of feeding animals raw foods, is that a kind of opinion that you share that we can't, or do you have a different perspective on that perhaps?
Different but similar. I mean,
Okay.
of course, you know, basically everything that I feed to my dogs comes from places that provide food for humans. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, so it's just sort of like it's all human grade until they grind it up and mix bone in it. And the green tripe isn't human grade, obviously. Yeah. But, you know, these come from, you know, grass-fed animals and, you know, from humane farms. And these are things that are important to humans as well. I think where I agree with Carissa and Carmina is when it comes to feeding our dogs, like when we're choosing supplements for our dogs, a lot of times it may be tempting, like for instance, fish oil, to just go to Costco and buy a big tub of fish oil capsules and give those to our dogs. But the problem is that there isn't always an easy translation to the doses that our dog needs. So we can either not be giving enough or we can be giving too much. Same thing like when we buy kefir, or yogurt or things like that, where we buy it for our dogs out of the store. You know, if it's kefir, but then it says low fat or no fat, that's pointless for our dogs. If it's been, if it's been processed in any way, then the bacteria isn't there anymore. And there's a lot of things that are, you know, natural that, you know, are highly processed, and the natural or the holistic or the organic is just a marketing term. So that's why I really, really encourage you to check for either Whole Foods or talk with, you know, talk with other pet parents about what they're giving their dogs, and look for brands who provide really good supplements for dogs. So for instance, the COQ10 that I mentioned, I can go and get that for humans, but I buy it from Dr. Harvey's because they have done the research, they have done the homework, and they are giving me exactly how much my dog needs. I don't have to do any type of math and figuring that out. So, you know, and plus we're supporting small businesses when we do that. So,
well, yeah, there is that too, and that's isn't it? Yeah. So I love the fact that, so kind of supporting Carissa and Carmina's information also. So generally is kind of, we can be aware of human diets and kind of translating them to our pets. However, as you said, and Carissa and Carmina said, we have to do the sufficient research to ensure that what we may think we're doing kind of benefit to our pets could actually be more detrimental to them if we're not doing the proper research all about it. So exactly. I think that's really, really important that you guys have raised. That's been amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so guys, so I believe now we can all head over to the main stage area, I believe. I'm feeling that we've got another session happening right now, so we can close out of this one, head back into sessions, and continue to follow some of the other conversations that we're having for the remainder of the evening. I think we've got like an hour left. So yeah, head over there, and thank you again.
See you later. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care. Speak to you soon. Bye.